Full disclosure, news and commentary number 66, 66, 66, 66, 66. Look at that. It's weird, right? You like get a little closer. See how this is like this black mark that moved up? No, I didn't go all Jeff Hardy and paint my fingernails or anything like that. This was, I got my thumb caught in a car door crunch, gosh, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And then as the nail has grown, so the blood bruise or whatever, or the stain that it made on the inside of the nail has moved up. Time marches on and marches on for all of us. I look like warmed over hell because I'm about to go work out. So this morning I've just been in get it done mode. My kids are upstairs being really gracious about staying out of my way while I do all this recording. They are setting them on a bunch of tasks, and this is probably a good lesson, setting them on a bunch of tasks to do this summer. And one of the things is I want both of them to become fluent in a different language. So they did the research on what should be done, and they're currently starting. So I'm very happy about that. I'm about to go work out. This shirt is stretched out. It's old as sin, as you can probably tell. It's my Jake the Snake Roberts shirt.
You know, one thing about this, man, this video, full disclosure, man, it's beautiful. I absolutely love it.
That's my Jake Roberts. It's actually pretty good. If you've ever
Been around Jake, you realize, man, you gotta do your thing.
And so first, let's thank our Patreon people. Patreon videos have been coming out faster and furious. Are always a great thing, and the people who support me on Patreon, dude, bless y'all. You guys are great. Dan and Joe Black, who's going to be part of the subject of our commentary today. Jeffrey Southern Honor, big announcement from them to talk about. Rob Rod, still putting out that great stuff. Brian, Larry, not that one, the other one. Diana, Brett, Derek, and then, of course, the three biggies, Eric Walker, Viral Pro Wrestling, and the OG Myron. Much appreciated. Our commentary is about Pro South and how Pro South points out a number of things about the wrestling scene, and they're filling a very important need, not just by running shows on the regular, not just by showing that you can follow the rules of a much stricter, I mean, Alabama's athletic commission, certainly much stricter than Georgia, and Pro South is showing us a lot of good stuff. And I was sent the Joe Black Austin Towers match by many people. And so I'm going to talk about that match, but talk about Pro South in general, and talk about the wrestling scene in Georgia as we start to get back to some semblance of normal. Speaking of normal, I just put out an Ask Platinum where somebody asked me, Michael asked me, when are we going to get back to normal as a society and as wrestling? And my answer surprised me. And it will surprise you as well, because I do have a definitive answer. Of course, I go on and I try to cover a lot of nuance, but the essence of that answer, I think, is a very important one, and it sort of indicates where we're going. Holy crap, do I need to shave my beard today? Yay, my haircut's still holding up. Glad about that. Let's talk about it. Talk about it. Bert Prentice doing a whole bunch of shows. For those that didn't know, I mean, it's a good reminder that Georgia Wrestling History covers a number of different states. It's really a Southeast thing. It's called Georgia Wrestling History because that's how it started, and its intent was very different at one point. Sorry, people continue to contact me, so I have to take a quick glance. Covers Tennessee and the Carolinas and Alabama and Florida and hell, even Puerto Rico. I love that they're still pulling out those Puerto Rican wrestling notes. Just a really valuable and important resource, and I'm glad people are utilizing that, and people are utilizing me. I have my full intention is to cover those pro South shows in general, but you guys got to realize, like, I watch a lot of wrestling and I report a lot of wrestling and I get paid to help people with their wrestling thing. And so, not to be an asshole, I certainly try to get to what everybody's doing, but I have a life on my own and projects of my own that I cover and that kind of thing. So it's crazy, and I know it's crazy for a lot of people out there as well. I get that, but just know that my intent is to never ignore anybody or to not do something that I intend to do. It's just priorities happen. Got to make that money, and then I got to cover the regular things that I already cover, because that's leading towards a purpose as well as helping with Georgia wrestling history. I want to make sure content's going up there. I want to make sure that we're still relevant. It's very important to me. Speaking of which, tomorrow night is Tipping Point, where hopefully we're going to have Thunder Rosa on there. She committed to doing it, but then haven't heard from her in a while. So if anybody knows her, please reach out to her and say, like, hey, you doing that Tipping Point thing tomorrow night? Just let Steve and Larry know. We're willing to accommodate as far as the time at which we tape it. I just think it's a very important thing to do. Mission Pro Wrestling, which she's doing. Great thing. Definitely want to talk about that. So the Burt Prentice shows are happening faster and furiouser, and he's making everybody mask up to try to fit. Burt Prentice shows. Imagine how much trouble could have been saved if his mouth was covered for years. Pro South continuing to do their shows to increasing appeal, and according to the reviews of Larry, which I trust implicitly, the shows are getting better and better, and they're really finding their groove. And like I said, I'm going to talk more about them in the commentary. So, Cameron Cade arrested again. Holy shit. Is it safe to say Bushido is done? Is Pro Wrestling Circuit done? Are there a number of groups that are done and just haven't said so? I would say that if you're done for the nonce, that an announcement is in order and just be done. Or you can just go away with a whimper. It got me thinking about wrestling groups that deserved more. Not necessarily that they deserve to keep running, but they deserve to have a last show of note. And I think that they belied their own legacy by not having one. I think most notably of Rampage Pro. Why in the shit did they not have a last show? I know the excuse given was Obama healthcare, like whatever the Doc Gatens bullshit was. Like they couldn't have run a last show. It was absolutely ludicrous. Oh, it would have cost us thousands. So does that mean that Rampage was losing thousands every time they ran? Seems unlikely. But if so, I'm so sure everybody would have been happy with a last shebang show. And then for years, AJ Steele would be like, yeah, I think we're going to be able to do a last one, blah, 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 blah. It does show the legacy of that show. Hell. As I'm getting off the subject, but that's always the more interesting parts, is it not? Rant Bell. Let's talk about what legacies really teach us and why they're so important. For a lot of people, legacies don't really matter. That's just, concocting some kind of narrative or trying to frame things. Yes, that's exactly what it is. In pro wrestling, because it is a series of stories, having the story told at the finish in the right way is invaluable. Because we see the damage that can be done when the end doesn't happen right? If you can break things up into 3 acts, the most important acts, the third one is the most important because that's what people will remember and that's what your legacy is remembered for, and it colors the rest of what we've seen before. Act 1 is the second most important because that's what people will initially know you by. Right? And that sets the tone and all that good stuff and gives you jumping off points to expand upon later. And Act 2 out of 3 is the least important. Don't believe me. Okay. Well, let me tell you. Game of Thrones, which should have gone down as the greatest show in history because of a I'll just use a kind word, a lackluster finish, particularly the last season or two. It is not even remembered in the narrative. People don't talk about it. People don't care about it. And people cared about that fucking show, myself included. And it's really telling that the end of that show has rendered the rest of that show moot. And Rampage not having a last show has rendered them moot, which tells me that maybe they weren't as significant as they're playing off to be. At one point, they really ran roughshod. I do remember distinctly the year that was clearly theirs in the Georgia Wrestling History Awards, which is a nice indicator of something, right? They won everything. And as I love to point it out because it drives him crazy, that Charlie Cash won Manager of the Year over Jeff G. Bailey. That's how hot they were. Certainly not how hot he was. Holy shit, no. And yet, a few years later, they were dead. And I mean dead. And I don't know. What are the legacies of various groups? I think it's an interesting thing to kind of look at and talk about, especially in light of COVID and getting to see aspects of promoters and bookers and higher ups in Georgia wrestling and how they are, and maybe that they weren't as smart as you thought or compassionate as you thought or whatever, right? What is the legacy? What is the legacy of, I'm just going to name groups off the top of my head that are out. Does PWR have a legacy? Does MGCW/NWA Atlanta have a legacy? Now, there's people that kind of plied their trade and then went on to do other things. To me, it's more remarkable when groups have reinvented themselves and continue to kind of slog through and ply their trade. Now, we're going to see where the chips fall, most certainly. Because in August, we've got a bunch of shows starting. But when I look at the legacy of groups that are gone now, put it this way. Nobody gave a shit that Rampage didn't do a last show. Not really. Would have been nice, but whatever. Nobody is clamoring to do podcasts about them now that they're gone. And most of the talent that made it big there found other avenues in which to do it. And none of them cite Rampage as some great thing where they were able to ply their trade. That's a real huge indication. Whereas Wildside, which hasn't been around in a long time, has found new birth in the podcast done by Chris that features Jeff G. Bailey about it, which are fucking phenomenal, by the way. When Bill Behrens puts up old Wildside stuff, it garners feelings, it garners reactions. There's wrestlers working today who were sitting in the audience of those shows that cite those shows as the reason they went on. There were people that wrestled for them that went on to big money deals and being a big fucking deal in places like TNA/Impact, WWE, Ring of Honor, etc., etc., etc. And guys used to drive from all over to do those shows and still speak fondly of NWA Wildside and early incarnations of Anarchy. So that's a legacy, right? If Peach State were to not run again, and I'm not saying I know something that they're not, but having Shane Knowles as part of the commentary team on Pro South sort of reminded me, like, what's Peach State going to do? If Peach State were to end, or decide to end, which would be fine, I would hope that they would have a last show. I would venture to guess that when they did that last show, they would be more than pleasantly surprised at how many people would turn out and the kind of response that they would get from the boys. There's a lot of people who owe their careers to Peach State. I've often asked of certain groups, must there be a whatever? And I think that doubly so now with a lot of Georgia and Florida indie groups. However, I certainly would want them to go out with a bang. I think it's a part of showmanship. It's part of pro wrestling. Go out. You know? Speaking of these shows that are running, we got Southern Honor is going to run on August 28th. Big show. I like it. I like it. It's a big one. And Rumblejack is a good one to come back on, I think. Tickets go on sale August 1st. And I think it will be interesting to see how they do ticket-wise. Same with Southern Fried, which is running on August 1st. Heritage, which is running this Friday. They switched their show to outdoors, which I think is the move. I think that's a good move. Larietto, good to see them back on July 25th. By the way, I still haven't looked at that wife swap that had Micah and Tracy Taylor on it. And I haven't heard anything about that. Nobody's talking about it. Huh. Find that interesting. It's not a diss or anything. It's just, it is what it is. So that's the news that's fit to print. I did want to talk about Evolve being quote-unquote bought by the WWE. This is not an indication that they're going to be bigger. This is not an indication that the WWE is going to do anything with them. This is an indication that the WWE has basically bought their tape library and they've folded shop. There's a really great article on pwinsider.com. By the way, if you do not regularly look at pwinsider.com, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. In an age where all wrestling websites put these clickbait titles up there, PW Insider is remarkably throwback. It's sort of well-written articles. Well-written articles and show summaries. And it's really refreshing. Mike Johnson wrote this thing. WWE acquires Evolve Wrestling, complete details. And it is complete details. But I like that he laid all the facts out and this long-standing analysis of Evolve. By the way, just go read this fucking thing. But I like when he kind of put in his commentary, but he saved it for the end, right? He has the facts and this. The sad reality is this. Evolve's accomplishments remain something to be proud of, even if the face of the final chapter, parentheses, at least for now, close parentheses, being written in the experiment that was Evolve. But none of them were enough, not even with the WWE connection, to make and keep Evolve financially solvent. Next paragraph. That, of course, begs the following question to be asked. If Evolve, an independent promotion that had all the connections and support of the WWE, wasn't able to safely find their way out in the post-pandemic world, what does that mean for the future of other independent promotions also still trying to bail themselves out of their own catastrophes that came out of the canceled WrestleMania 36 week in Tampa? Next paragraph. How can promotions on a minuscule budget attempt to strategize moving forward in a world that has completely changed over the last several months? Final paragraph. If Evolve couldn't evolve, how does anyone? And does that mean they are just the first to fall in the wake of the disastrous turn of events everyone in pro wrestling has dealt with over the last several months, especially as COVID-19 numbers are once again spiking across the United States? Evolve, 2010 to 2020. Here's part of that answer. Independent promotions shouldn't be scared of what happened to Evolve. Yes, they had a WWE connection, but Evolve, let's be honest, Rant, was a promotion for the boys. I went to Evolve shows, and they literally sometimes could not give tickets away. And it's because they're in a saturated market appealing to a very niche audience. WWN in general is going to continue, but is ACW going to continue? Is it going to be a thing? I don't know. I imagine the women's group will be okay, shine, because they had their own built-in fan base. They really did. A lot of them were these sort of virginal fat guys who would pay for customs and very happy to sort of pay the girls. They could bring in talent from other places, whereas Evolve was a lot of guys that you could see at other Florida shows and Georgia shows, frankly. It was a promotion for the boys. And I think what should come out of this is if you're a promotion that just runs for the boys, to appeal to the boys, if you're a promotion that is just strictly a vanity promotion, and I'm not saying Evolve was that, but we've seen, when I talk about a number of the other federations that are done, like NWA Atlanta / MGCW and Rampage. They were vanity promotions. Period. And they didn't survive because as soon as that person who was in charge or who the promotion was made for so they could have a place to work and play, as soon as they weren't interested or distracted by something else, the promotion completely folded because there was nothing substantive with which to keep it going. I know people are going to get mad at that statement, but it's completely true. Right? PCW, which is literally named, I'm Stephen Platinum, and it was Platinum Championship Wrestling, but I left, and it kept going. Because there was something there besides just Steve wants it to keep going, so it's going to keep going. Argue with me all you want, but that's a fact, right? It continues to go, right? Through Shane Mackey, other people who have run it, other people who have contributed to running it, and now Matt Hankins. Yeah, and other people that have factored in as far as running that thing and keeping it going. Quasi, Chuck, Rachel, Johnny Danger, right? All people that have contributed, yeah. But, it was really Shane Mackey that kept it going right after I left, and then Matt Hankins who keeps it going today with Platinum Championship Wrestling version, the remix, right? Evolve is done, and they aren't going to factor in anymore. And what does that mean for the Georgia indie promoter? It means nothing. Gary Lamb can keep Southern Honor going. Now, what are the crowds going to be? I'm not sure. But they can keep it going. And what happened to Evolve has no resemblance to Southern Honor whatsoever. Or Southern Fried. Or Anarchy. Right? Everybody took a hit. I think only a couple of people and a couple of entities managed to raise their stock throughout COVID. And that's totally understandable. And if you did not, quote unquote, raise your stock, totally understandable. If you got fucking fat and out of shape as a wrestler, I get it. Right? But now we're really doing it. Now we're really getting back into doing shows. And while I'm curious of what the crowd numbers will be, I'm certainly understanding when they're not as high. If they're not as high. And I notice even the usual suspects are not doing a lot of bragging about what their crowds are going to be. As well they should not. I think turning down the braggadocio for a little while is probably a good move. And that is probably going to inspire at least a couple people to go, well, fuck, I'm going to start fucking bragging then. Okay. As the kids say, you do you. But it's also a chance to grow. And a chance to evolve and change. As well you should. Don't be a promotion that's just for the boys. And to impress the boys. And don't be a promotion that's vanity promotion. And if you are, find a way to change that. Commentary. So I looked at Joe Black versus Austin Towers. And you'll notice that the thumbnail is that picture. And it's the best picture that's come out about wrestling all year. Austin Towers grabbing Joe Black by the throat. Could Austin Towers look more immense? Could Austin Towers look more like, why isn't somebody signing this fucking guy? That picture is golden. And on someone's request, they asked me to look at the match, and they said I didn't have to make a video out of it. And so I'm not going to. But as I was reviewing the match, as I tend to do, I look at all kinds of stuff, and it just put to a second point the point that I want to make about Pro South and the point I want to make about wrestling, and it just seemed appropriate for a commentary. I know it's a very different kind of commentary than I usually do, but that's a good thing too. So Joe Black versus Austin Towers. I'm just going to read down my notes, and this happened at Pro South last Friday. Holy shit, he's huge. When Austin Towers came out, he looked great. He looked huge. And some people say like, oh, he's kind of skinny fat. Fuck you. Like, that shit can be worked on, should be worked on. But Austin Towers is uniquely huge. It's sort of like Jeter it's like Logan Creed. Like there's just impressive. I'm not going to get into a bunch of cliches about you can't teach size, la 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 la. I will just say, in this day and age, where people will derisively call AEW all petite wrestling and shit like that, and a number of smaller wrestlers are making their way on WWE programming on down, and the accusations of larger indies and smaller national groups is fuck, they just look like dudes in the audience. And that argument is not without merit totally. To see somebody who strikes you magnificently, I'm not just talking about his height, I'm not just talking about his relative size along with his height. I'm talking about the fucking hair works. His facial expressions work. His body languages work. I'm a big, a lot of people have said, fuck, you went after Austin Towers at random and blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't say it if I didn't give a fuck. I hope people understand. I'm not going to fucking talk about you if you have zero potential as an individual wrestler or performer. Unless I'm making fun of you because you're a piece of shit. Peace out to those people who know who they are. Or you're a group that is fucking ludicrous and I think you're bad for wrestling. Shout out to those groups. One of whom is hopefully fucking done for good as well. I talk about because it's fuck, it's noteworthy and it's important. And if you haven't made it yet, in an era where lots of people are in fucking line to soon make it, fucking put yourself there quickly. Because time moves quickly. And it's great to see Austin Towers. Him fucking putting over that left hand shit looked fucking great. The sort of subtle disrespect to Joe, who played it right in the corner. Joe, right from the jump, knows he has two monumental tasks. And as the technical wrestler of the year last year, he had to overcome both of them, which is how can I be a heel against a guy who's so much bigger than me? And how can I put over Austin Towers? And I don't mean just by getting your shoulders pinned. I think he accomplished both of those things along with Austin Towers himself. Other notes, puts over the left-hand path, looks great. I read about this match, so I know some shenanigans happened with the left-hand path afterwards. But that wasn't part of this match, so it's not in my notes. You should read the report by Larry Goodman, gwhnewsandnotes.blogspot.com. I put here early, commentators doing a great job, and the referee is doing an especially great job. Wish the referee was smaller. I put that in my notes. I wanted everything to be about how huge Austin Towers was. Here's the ultimate compliment I can give. I got the vibe of babyface Andre in the Territory days from Austin Towers. Of how can the guy who's so immense nonetheless be a bit beloved babyface? And he clearly is. Really good. Does that mean that everything I'm going to do in my notes is complimentary? It's not. There are a couple things to work on. But just this overall vibe and then what it says about Pro South is important. I put Joe Black is great. Underline, period. He is. All the little details in the beginning where Joe Black was like, I'm going to use my speed, which is the obvious thing. So he does the single leg, dives in, blah, blah, blah. But Austin Tower catches him, throws him in the corner. Boom, boom. Hits him with the chop. Turns around to sell it. Like, that chop usually fucking hurts guys for a long time, but we're going to say Joe Black is different. So Joe Black is kind of like laughing at it. Woo! Like, yeah, your chop. Spits the gum at him. Love that fucking spot. Wish the commentators had made a bigger deal about that. The commentators, my advice for Shane Knowles and Wicked Nemesis. One, I think you're both really good at it. In fact, I think this might be the perfect role for Wicked Nemesis. Not that he can't manage. Of course he can fucking manage. But I think if he sharpens this thing as a commentator, this is a thing for him. Just saying. Austin's offense looked good. All those forearm shots, everything looked fucking crisp as shit. This moves up later in the match, so they're doing their thing and it's good. And the story is working on Austin's left arm at first and then his right arm later to destroy both arms. Love that story. The bell clap from Austin Towers looked fucking phenomenal. He needs to find a way to work that into his regular offense. It's fucking great. And it removes sort of the clunky stuff. When he's on the floor and the person's in the ring, it's going to look ludicrous for him to dodge and duck and stuff to get back in the ring. But that bell clap, pop, it looks great. It's safe as shit. And if it's sold properly, as Joe, of course, did, it provides a very easy transition to get Austin Towers here, there, and everywhere without having him move a million miles an hour. Austin sells well. This has been noted by many people. It's noted by me here. Joe works heel wonderfully. Not a surprise, but it's still worth pointing out that Joe, who's been working babyface elsewhere, just puts a wrinkle in it to be heel. He's not overt with it. He doesn't act completely differently. And Pro South is a great place to try stuff out, which is why it's valuable. Very valuable. The crowd did not pick up on the hope spots. That's one area of improvement. I think if Austin can express things more gregariously, like when he hits and Joe starts to sell, Joe's doing the appropriate amount of panic to cue the crowd, but Austin's not doing the appropriate amount of, okay, I finally have this burden lifted off of me. Now it's my time. We want to taking on the offense, bam, 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 bam. We want to bring the crowd up for those hope spots, so we're not leveling off at the bottom emotionally. And both of the hope spots, the crowd wasn't really cued in on them. And it's a crowd that wanted to love Austin, and it's a crowd that wanted to get into the story of the match and was in the story of the match, but they did not pick up on the hope spot cues. So that's something to look at and work on. Austin, strikes looked good, even through the middle and end of the match. Bigger guys tend to tire, and their stuff looks like shit. Austin has that selling thing down, and I imagine it's a natural thing that he himself has developed within himself. I don't think he was taught this. I think this is something that he has worked on and done a great fucking job with. Joe's got charisma for days. And I think if there's one thing Austin Towers can continue to do, it's to develop that charisma piece. He's got it, but he wants it at the Joe level, because then he's unstoppable. He's willing to sell. Joe's willing to sell. Great story of arm work being used as a counter. I love the stuff where Austin Towers would pick up Joe for a big move, and Joe would counter by putting a lock on the arm. Fucking love it. The various locks, the various slowing downs of the match, the pace of the match worked really well for Austin Towers. It was just really good. The Austin chants are very loud. The commentators did a great job, except for one part, and then they fucked it up. And it almost ruined the whole commentary thing for me, because it was so botched. That discus forearm to the back of the neck of Austin Towers looked phenomenal. So it's Joe executing perfectly. It's Austin Towers selling appropriately. But the commentators tip the fucking hand as soon as he hit the move and go like, well, that would knock out a mortal man. Basically telling us this has no chance of getting the pin. Way to fucking ruin a falsie for no good reason. Come on, commentators. When the commentators slipped into cliche land, it was shitty. When they spoke real and they were concentrated on, let's put guys over, let's put moments over, let's put Joe Black over, let's put Austin Towers over, let's put this match over, let's put Pro South over, it was great. But when they slipped into cliches, it was not as great. When they got detailed with their commentary, it was great. When they stuck to generalities, it was not. Those are my general notes for the commentators. The spot that only Joe Black could have pulled this spot off, but Austin Towers certainly held up his end, where he threw the kick, where Austin Towers is on his knees, and he throws the kick at Austin Towers' head, and Austin Towers catches the foot without using his arms because his arms are too hurt to do. That's a spot that on paper I would go, don't do that fucking spot. But they made that impossible spot work. WWE needs to take notes of these motherfuckers. AEW needs to take note of these motherfuckers. You can do something unusual and unconventional, but you can only do it 1 or 2 times a match, and it has to be, you have to stop the moment in time and make sure that it's clear what you're doing. And they did exactly that. They pulled off a spot that should not have worked, that should have looked like a fuck up, and they made it work. Kudos to Austin Towers and Joe Black for that. Fucking awesome. Right? The pump kick finish didn't feel like the finish. That's a problem too. The Shawn Michaels stomp one time, striking up the band thing, it didn't work as... It can be the finish, and it certainly worked as the finish, and the crowd, once they realized that it was really the finish, responded. But you didn't get that crescendo, you didn't get the build to the climax of that spot. So that's something to work on. But you got the Austin Towers chance at the end, and then the commentators were back in good form. This is the biggest match for Joe, blah, 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 blah. Joe Black certainly had nothing to be ashamed of. I especially like the line that happened right when the match cut off. I don't know if it was Shane Knowles or if it was Wicked Nemesis, but whoever was saying the line of, if Joe Black had wrestled anybody else, and I saw where they were going with that, if he had wrestled anybody else, and hopefully they said on the planet, that would have been even better. If he had wrestled anybody else on the planet, he would have won, but Austin Towers was just not going to be denied. If that was the general feeling, awesome. And I would have said anybody on the planet. Fuck just Pro South. Great. What does this tell us about Pro South? Pro South is now the place where guys get to learn, including the people doing the booking and running the show. It's a work in progress, and I'm here for it, as the kids say. Pro South is needed and necessary. We need Anarchy to go back to being this to an extent. Anarchy, the talent's got to be high. And not like they were in PCW. They've got to be at a high level, but there also has to be a teaching element. So many promotions have come around that were supposed to be that this is a place to learn that have crapped out. It never really happened. NCW was supposed to relaunch. That never really fucking happened. And, you know, APW, who knows when they're going to be back. And in fact, that role for them was kind of slipping anyway, if we're being fucking honest. But Pro South is now the #1 group in the Southeast where you learn and do your shit. And where the boys are excited to go, and guys are able to, and guys that really know what the fuck they're doing are working with guys to help lift them up. Huckabee and Joe, amongst others. And if I didn't mention your name, don't get your fucking lycra in a twist. It's okay. You're important too. But the commentators are learning, and the booker is learning, but they're learning in a way that feels like it's ascending, and it's getting really fucking good. And Austin Towers and others are benefiting from that, but also contributing to it as well. I saw where Brandon Watley put out a thing where he was very proud about Pro South and shared a message from Shane Knowles where Shane Knowles is like, guys, you got to check this out. When the boys are excited about your shit and promoting it, that's a great sign. And Pro South right now is doing it right, man. And of course, I'm partial and I'm biased because I love a weekly show. I think that makes you a real show. I think twice a month, you're a real show as well. I think once a month, I've allowed that in the last 2 years in my mind, sort of. But we can see, like, when COVID came along and a bunch of people weren't able to run shows, here's what's weird. We didn't really miss that many shows. Right? 2, 3. But some shows we missed 10, 12. It's a big fucking difference. And Pro South has obviously hit the ground running. They've got their shit correct with the Alabama Athletic Commission. They've got an audience. I would imagine the audience for their fucking shows on YouTube are much higher than they were before. And that's great. And other people can learn from them, and don't be ashamed to learn from them. And they themselves hopefully will keep this vibe going and continue to improve. Certainly, they've reached out to a number of people to help improve their shows. And like I said, I would love to contribute, but hopefully this goes a long way towards that, looking at the Joe Black, Austin Towers match and all the associated things with it. Yeah. It's not enough to just come back and do your shows because your audience loves you or you need the money. Of course, that shit matters. And I'm not going to pretend it doesn't matter, even though, my philosophy of fuck the fans still remains as strong today as ever. However, a vision and a process, I think, goes a long way. And just as a little extra kicker, July, which we're part of the way through already, August, September, October, November, December. Right now, everybody, more or less, is tied for all of the awards. And most people aren't going to start running until next month, so that gives you 4 or 5 months. Now, when the San Antonio Spurs won the NBA title in a shortened season, does anybody go like, that one doesn't count? Of course it counts. If you win Promotion of the Year, Booker of the Year, Wrestler of the Year, Technical Wrestler of the Year, whatever, does it count if really you only did 3 or 4 months worth of shows? Yes, of course it does. Start your motherfucking engines. This has been Full Disclosure.